I've been going through my grandfather's things since he passed, sorting the estate the way you do, trying to decide what gets kept and what don't. Found his old mine diary in a cigar box, along with some loose company papers he'd held onto for reasons I don't fully know yet. Here's the question that diaries had me sitting with for a month now. How does a man walk into a mine gallery in front of 9 other men who all knowed him by name on a night in October of 1922 and never come out the other end? That part alone I could live with. Mines took men. Everybody up here knows that. But the company's own settlement book, sitting right there in the same box, says that man had already drawed his final pay and left camp 2 weeks before that night ever happened. So 9 men swore they watched him walk in, and a company ledger swears he wasn't even there no more. Both of them things can't be true, and I've read my grandfather's hand on that page more times than I can count, and I still don't know which one's lying to me. I'm going to lay it all out for you. The diary, the ledger, what I've pieced together since, and by the end, young'un, I don't reckon either one of us is going to feel settled about it. I sure ain't. It's just me, Papa Elias, and I'm glad it's you sitting here for this one, 'cause it's got me turned around more than most. If you'll subscribe, you'll catch these of a Saturday and Sunday when I light the lamp and tell what I got. And all like helps bring more folks around that can sit with something unsettled and not need it wrapped up neat. Now, let's go back to that cigar box. That box had been setting in my mama's attic since Ezra passed, and I hadn't gone through the whole of it till here lately. Mostly what you'd expect: pay stubs, a pocket knife, a Bible with the corners worn soft, and down at the bottom, wrapped in a flour sack, this diary. Ezra kept it off and on most of his young years in the mines before he ever got old enough to be the granddaddy I knew setting on his own porch. Wasn't a man that wrote for the fun of it. Wrote when something needed putting down and left it be otherwise. I want you to hold on to that, 'cause it matters for what's coming. Ezra didn't write things down he wasn't sure of. If it's in that book, he's seen it with his own eyes, and he wrote it anyway, knowing it didn't make no sense. The entry that stopped me is dated October the 14th, 1922. Just a few lines, in his young hand, not the hand I remembered from later. Says 9 men, him included, watched a fella named Amos Tackett walk into Gallery 9 at the start of night shift, and that Amos Tackett never walked back out. Now, mines are dangerous. A man not coming out ain't the mystery by itself. The mystery is what I found staring back at me from the very next page of that same box, a company paper that says Amos Tackett had already collected his final pay and left that camp 2 full weeks before that shift ever started. So who did them 9 men watch walk in? Left Fork was the name of the camp, company town, through and through. Rows of identical frame houses the coal company owned, a company store where a man spent his wages before he ever saw cash money, and a mine that ran 3 shifts a day. The whistle blowing so regular, folks set their supper by it. Ezra was 21 years old that fall, working the night shift same as most young unmarried men did. Better pay for worse hours, and no wife waiting up to mind it. Gallery 9 was one of the older workings, cut deep into the mountain, mostly played out by then. 9 men worked at that shift, Ezra among 'em. On account of the seam was thin enough there, they kept the crew small. Amos Tackett was one of them 9, wasn't nobody special to Ezra, not kin, not a particular friend, just a fella he worked alongside, same as any of the others. Diary says Tackett was quiet, kept to hisself, boarded alone stead of with a family. The kind of man that's there every day and then one day he ain't. And it takes a while for anybody to notice the shape of him missing. 9 men, 1 gallery, a seam thin enough that everybody could see everybody else most nights. If the lamp's caught right, that's the people, and that's the place. Now here's what the diary says happened. The entry for that night starts plain, same as any other workday. Shift started at 6. 9 men went in together, lamps lit. Same as always. Ezra wrote that Tackett walked in same as every day, his exact words, nothing different about his step, his talk, nothing that stood out to a single one of them. Round about 2 hours in, the crew split to work different faces of the gallery, the way they always did on a shift that size. Tackett went on toward the far end, deeper in, same section he'd worked most weeks that fall. Wasn't unusual. Wasn't the first time a man went off on his own stretch while the others worked closer to the entry. When shift ended and the 9 counted up to head out, they come up 8. Now, first thing any of them figured, and it's what I'd have figured too, was that Tackett got turned around in the dark, or a section of that played-out gallery give way quiet, without the kind of noise that'd bring men running. Mining accidents happen that way sometimes. No great crash, just a man that don't answer when you call his name. They searched that night and into the next day, combed every foot of gallery 9 they could reach. Didn't find him. Didn't find a mark on the walls, a disturbed patch of rock, nothing to say where he might have gone down. Still, that was the story everybody could live with. A man lost in a dead mine. Sad, but plain enough. Except, it wasn't plain. Not once I turned the next page. The next page in that box wasn't Ezra's hand at all. It was a loose company sheet, a final settlement record, the kind Left Fork issued when a man drew his last pay and left camp for good. Standard company paper, printed form, filled in by whatever clerk kept the books that season. Name on it, Amos Tackett. Date on it, October the 1st, 1922. 13 days before that shift. 13 days before 9 men watched him walk into Gallery 9. According to that record, Tackett had settled his account, collected what the company owed him, and left Left Fork for good, near 2 weeks, for the night he supposedly vanished in it. There's even a line in a clerk's neat hand noting his last known destination, a camp 2 counties over, name I won't bother you with, on account of I've since learned it don't matter. He never showed up there neither. Nobody I can find ever laid eyes on Amos Tackett again, anywhere, after that settlement was signed. So here's where I got stuck, same as I reckon Ezra got stuck, 'cause he never wrote another word about it that whole week. If Tackett was already gone, drawed his pay, walked off down that county road, who did 9 men, working men not given to fancy, watch walk into that gallery? You can't have both. Either the settlement record's wrong, or 9 men's memory is. And I've turned that over enough nights now to tell you, I don't think either one of 'em is. Now, before I go on, let me ask you something. You've been hearing this same as me, piece by piece. What do you make of it so far? If you'd been standing with them 9 men that night, watching a fella you'd worked beside walk into that gallery plain as day, would you have believed your own eyes? Or would you have believed a piece of paper, signed and dated, saying he wasn't even there no more? Tell me down below. I'm curious where you'd have landed. Now, back to it. 'Cause the deeper I dug, the less anybody in that camp agreed on what to believe either. Ezra's diary don't say much about the days right after, but I found other things in that box that fill some of it in, a few letters, a clipping from a camp bulletin, even a note somebody tucked in the back pages of the diary itself, not in Ezra's hand. The company's own position, best I can tell, was simple. Clerical error. Somebody at the office had mixed up the settlement date or mixed up Tackett with another man of similar name. There was a Tackett working over at a different camp 2 hollers off, no kin far as anybody knew, but similar enough a tired clerk might have confused the two. Companies didn't like mysteries. A mixed-up ledger was a lot easier to live with than 9 men seeing something they couldn't explain. The church folks, from what that bulletin clipping says, had their own read on it, talked about it being a warning, a sign, something owed coming due. Didn't name what. Preachers in coal country in them days talked in signs and warnings regular on account of the work gave 'em plenty of reason to. And then there's the note. Just a few words, different hand than Ezra's, tucked so far back in that diary I near missed it. Says, ask E about the coat. I don't know who wrote it. I don't know who E is, though I got my suspicions reading the rest. But I know Ezra never once mentioned a coat in anything he wrote about that night. Not till I found the entry that note was pointing me toward. I went back through that diary page by page after finding that note, looking for any mention of a coat, and I found it, one entry, dated near 3 weeks after the shift, that I'd read past the first time without it catching my eye. It ain't long, but I'll read it to you the way Ezra put it down. Been thinking on it again tonight, on account of Sari asked me to write down what I recall plain so it don't get muddied in the telling. Amos come in the gallery same as ever day. I said that already. But I recall the coat now, thinking on it hard. Brown wool, tore at the left shoulder seam, mended crude with a thread that didn't match the cloth. I'd seen that coat before that night. I'm certain of it. Just can't yet place where. I didn't think on the coat that night. Man walking in dim light, you see what you expect to see, and I expected Amos Tackett. But I've laid awake more nights than I care to count since trying to place that mend, that tear, that particular brown. I know I've seen it. I just ain't let myself finish the thought of where. That's Ezra's hand, near as I can read it, a little shakier than his younger entries, like the writing itself was costing him something. He knew that coat. He just hadn't let hisself say from where yet. It took me longer than it took Ezra, but I finally placed it too. Took some digging through the rest of that box, and a little help from county records I tracked down since, but I found it. A little clipping, water-stained from a mine safety report filed the year before Amos Tackett ever walked into that gallery. August of 1921. A roof fall in Gallery 9, the same gallery. Killed a miner named Cephas Prophet. Crew couldn't get to him safe. Roof was too unstable to dig. They gave him a stone in the camp cemetery, same as any man, but there wasn't nothing under it. His body stayed where the mountain took it. The report don't mention a coat. Why would it? But I found something else in a letter from Cephas's widow to the company asking after his final wages. She describes what he was wearing the day he went down. Brown wool coat, she says, that she'd mended herself at the shoulder not 2 weeks before on account of he'd tore it on a support beam. Mended it crude, she admits, with thread she'd had on hand, not matched to the cloth. Let me tell it slow, young'un, that's the coat. Same tear, same crude mend, same brown wool Ezra couldn't place. laying awake nights trying. Cephas prophet's widow moved off within the year, and near as I can tell, that coat left with her. Except a neighbor woman, in a separate letter I found, mentioned seeing it still hanging on the widow's wash line, months after she'd supposedly took it with her when she left. So here's what I know, and it ain't enough. A dead man's coat. A missing man nobody can place before or after that night. And 9 witnesses who watched something wearing both walk into a gallery that already took one life it never gave back. The way I figure it, and I could be wrong, I'll say that plain, is that somebody, some drifter or a man passing through looking for work, come across that coat somehow. Bought it off a peddler, found it left somewhere, I don't know. Put it on, walked into that camp looking like he belonged, and got himself mistook, in bad light, deep underground, for a man who'd already drawed his pay and gone. 9 men, tired, working by lamplight, seeing what they half expected to see. That happens. I've seen it happen with less strange a coat than that one. But there's folks I respect, men who worked that same gallery for years after, kin of some of them 9, that swear it wasn't no drifter. That swear Cephas prophet come back for what the mountain owed him, wearing the last thing that was his, and that Amos Tackett's settlement being backdated wasn't error at all, but somebody at the company covering for something they couldn't explain no better than I can. I can't tell you which one of us has got it right. Maybe it was a stranger in a dead man's coat, and the company really did fumble a date on a form. Maybe it's the other thing. Maybe, up in these hills, it's always a little of both, the plain explaining and the thing under it that don't quite fit. The truth of it, whatever it was, went into the ground with Ezra, and it stayed there. Gallery 9 got sealed off within the year. Company said the roof was unsafe, which by then it certainly was, whatever the reason it got that way. Nobody worked that section again. Far as I know, it's still sealed, if the mountain even remembers it's there. Amos Tackett never turned up. Not at that camp 2 counties over, not with kin, not in any record I've been able to find, not a grave, not a death certificate, not so much as a mention in a letter home. A man that the company swore had walked away alive, and there ain't one single trace of him having walked anywhere at all ever again after that settlement got signed. Ezra didn't write about it much more after that entry about the coat. Few scattered lines. Further down the years, nothing that adds to what I've told you. Whatever he came to believe, he kept the rest of it to himself. Same as he kept that note tucked in the back pages. Same as he kept that whole box wrapped up and put away for near 70 years. And to this day, ain't nobody can tell you what happened to Amos Tackett. I can't. And I've had that diary in my 2 hands, closer to it than most anybody left living. The question's still there. It never got answered. Maybe it can't be. I told you at the start, I don't feel settled about this one. I don't. But you've got the same pieces I got now, the diary, the ledger, the coat, all of it. So down below, tell me, was it a stranger in a dead man's coat and a company clerk who fumbled a date on a form? Or was it something else? Something that walked back into that gallery wearing the last thing that was ever really its own? I ain't gonna tell you which one I believe tonight. I want to see how it splits. Come back this weekend, I got one about a woman 3 folks sat up with the night she passed. Same room, same lamp, and not one of the 3 of them tells you the same thing about what happened when that lamp went out. I put that diary back in the flour sack, same as I found it, and set it back down in that cigar box, with the settlement paper and the note and the letters. Didn't feel right doing anything else with it Some things you sort through an estate for, and some things you just put back where they was and let be. I've thought a lot since about Ezra setting up nights writing that entry about the coat, knowing he couldn't make sense of it and writing it down anyway. That's a kind of honesty I don't see much of. Man could have just let it go unwritten. Easier that way. He didn't. Lord keep whoever it was that walked into that gallery, Amos Tackett, if it was him. Cephas Prophet, if it was him. Or somebody I ain't never gonna have a name for. That's the one. That's all I got for you tonight.